Your support means a lot. With 90% of our viewers still not subscribed, we need your help to continue creating interesting content. Please subscribe and press the notification bell. Let us know where you are watching from by leaving your city in the comments below. I never imagined I would end up here, standing on the edge of the life I had carefully built, questioning everything I once believed was unchangeable. My marriage, my home, my role as a wife, a mother, and a trusted member of a close family. These were the foundations of my life. But beneath this seemingly perfect world, a quiet pain had started to grow, spreading through the cracks of my heart like ivy climbing an old wall. I told myself it was nothing, just a brief feeling of restlessness caused by routine. But deep inside I knew the truth. It started during a family gathering, one of those summer afternoons that slowly stretch into the evening, where laughter and conversation mix with the smell of grilled food and the buzzing of cicadas. Our families had always been connected, not only by blood but also by shared traditions. Holidays spent together and the silent understanding that family means everything. Among the familiar faces, one stood out to me in a way it never had before. Ethan was my husband's cousin. Even though we had grown up attending the same family events, I had always seen him as just a distant presence in the background of my life. He was quiet, reserved, someone who preferred the edges of a crowded room rather than its center. But that summer, something about him seemed different, or maybe it was I who had changed. As the sun lowered and the sky turned a soft lavender, we found ourselves sitting together on the porch, away from the noise of the gathering. Our conversation began like usual, polite questions and shared memories of past family reunions. But slowly it shifted. There was an ease to our talk that surprised me, a depth to his words that touched me in ways I didn't expect. He spoke about his dreams, his struggles, his search for meaning in a world that often felt empty. I listened, fascinated not only by his words but by how he made me feel noticed, understood in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something. A spark, a slight trembling, a quiet stirring deep in my heart. And it frightened me. In the days that followed, I tried to forget that evening, to hide it under the weight of my duties. But Ethan stayed in my thoughts like a melody I couldn't stop hearing. I told myself it was just a brief weakness, a moment of connection that didn't mean anything in the larger picture. After all, I loved my husband. Daniel was a good man. Kind, reliable, the kind of partner many women would wish for. We had built a life together, filled with shared dreams and quiet peace. But even as I tried to remind myself why my heart should stay loyal, I couldn't ignore the growing distance between us. Marriage, I had learned, was not the fairy tale I once believed. It wasn't endless passion or constant happiness. It was compromise, routine, the slow blending of two lives into one. And somewhere along the way, while raising children, paying bills, and facing the ordinary struggles of adult life, the spark between Daniel and me had faded. We still loved each other, I was sure of that. But it was a love that had become comfortable, predictable, and if I was honest, a little lifeless. Ethan, with his quiet intensity and thoughtful eyes, felt like a reflection of something I had lost. A reminder of the woman I used to be before life became so heavy. At first, our interactions remained innocent. A shared smile across the room at another family event, a short conversation in the kitchen while others were busy. But each moment felt charged, as if the air between us was filled with unspoken words. I told myself it was harmless, that I was overthinking things. Yet, as the weeks turned into months, I found myself drawn to him in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just his presence that fascinated me. It was how he seemed to see past the mask I wore, straight into the restless, yearning soul beneath. I remember the first time our connection crossed the line from innocent to something more. It was a cool autumn evening, the kind where the air smells of fallen leaves and the sky looks like a painting filled with stars. We had gathered at my in-laws' house for a family dinner, and as the evening went on, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet. I found Ethan there, leaning against the porch railing, his breath visible in the chilly night air. We talked as we always did, but this time our words carried more weight, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. "I feel like I've been sleepwalking through my life," I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Like I'm just going through the motions, but not really living. Ethan didn't reply immediately. He looked out at the horizon, his expression thoughtful. I know what you mean, he finally said. Sometimes I wonder if this is all there is, just existing instead of truly living. His words struck a deep chord within me, and for a while we stood there silently, the unspoken understanding between us stronger than anything we could have said aloud. When he finally looked at me, his eyes held a mixture of sadness and something else, something that made my heart race. In that moment, I knew we were standing on the edge of something that could change everything. When the cracks in your life begin to appear, they don't break open all at once. They form quietly in the shadows of your daily routines, slowly creeping into your soul like water seeping through stone. The weight of my choices, those stolen moments, whispered conversations in the dark, and the growing guilt, had settled deep within me. I thought I could handle it. I believed I could live two lives, balancing the person I was with the person I had become. But the truth has a way of finding its voice, even when you try to silence it. The morning after my meeting with Ethan in the park, the world felt heavier. The decision to end our connection should have brought me relief, maybe even closure. But instead, it left an empty ache I couldn't ignore. The thought of facing my husband, Daniel, with the truth was a weight I wasn't ready to carry. I had always taken pride in being strong, in being the kind of person who could survive any storm. But this storm was one I had created myself, and the damage it could bring terrified me. I spent the next few days lost in reflection, wondering how I had allowed things to spiral so far out of control. I replayed every moment of our marriage in my mind, searching for the points where we had drifted apart, where we had let the silence grow between us. Daniel had always been my solid ground, a steady, dependable presence in my life. He wasn't the type to make grand romantic gestures or dramatic declarations of love, but his devotion was clear in the small things. The way he made my coffee just the way I liked it every morning. The way he held my hand during tough times. The quiet comfort in his voice that made me believe everything would be all right. And yet, somewhere along the way, I had stopped noticing him. I had stopped listening. As I sat at the kitchen table late one night, the house silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator, I knew I couldn't keep the truth from him any longer. The guilt was consuming me, and every time I looked into his eyes, I felt like a liar. He deserved to know, no matter how much it would hurt him. How do you tell the person you love that you've betrayed them? How do you find the words that will break their world apart? When I finally found the courage to speak, it was a quiet Sunday afternoon. The kids were out with friends, and the house was filled with the soft golden light of late autumn. Daniel was sitting in the living room reading a book, his glasses resting on the bridge of his nose. It was such a familiar, comforting scene that, for a moment, I almost convinced myself to walk away, to let the moment pass and keep my secret hidden. But then he looked up at me, his expression gentle and loving, and I knew I couldn't hide any longer. Daniel, I began, my voice shaking. Can we talk? He placed the book down, a faint crease forming between his brows. Of course, he said calmly, though his tone was curious. What's on your mind? I sat down across from him, my hands tightly clasped in my lap, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear my own thoughts. The words I had practiced 100 times in my mind suddenly felt too small for the truth I was about to reveal. I need to tell you something, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Something I should have told you a long time ago. His eyes searched mine, and I saw a flicker of concern, a faint hint of unease. Okay, he said slowly. I'm listening. And so I told him. I spoke about the growing distance between us, the loneliness that had slipped into our marriage, and how I had allowed myself to seek comfort in someone else. I told him about Ethan, how it began, how it developed, and how I ended it. I didn't soften the truth or try to defend my actions. I simply laid everything before him, raw and unfiltered, my voice breaking under the weight of my confession. When I finished, the silence was overwhelming. Daniel stared at me, his expression unreadable, his hands tightly clenched in his lap. I could see the pain in his eyes, the betrayal, but also the effort he was making to stay composed. He didn't shout or get angry. He just sat there, absorbing the heavy truth. "How long?" he finally asked, his voice low and strained. "How long has this been happening?" "Months," I admitted, my voice trembling. "But it's over now. I ended it. I swear to you, Daniel. I never meant to hurt you." "Stop," he said, raising his hand. "Just stop." The look in his eyes broke me, a mixture of anger, sadness, and something else I couldn't quite describe. He stood up suddenly, pacing the room, trying to process what he had just heard. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him again how sorry I was, but I knew no words could undo the damage I had caused. "I need some time," he finally said, his voice tight. "I need to think." And with that, he left the room, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of my guilt. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in our home grew heavy with tension. Daniel was distant. His conversations with me were short and routine. He buried himself in work, spending long hours at the office and coming home late. When he was home, he avoided me, retreating to the study or bedroom without speaking. The silence between us, once peaceful, now felt like a gap I couldn't cross. I wanted to reach out to him, to beg for his forgiveness, but I didn't know how. I had broken something between us, something fragile and precious, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, he walked into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. His arms crossed over his chest. For a moment, he simply watched me, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he finally said, his voice steady but firm. I nodded, placing the dish back in the sink. "Okay." He motioned toward the dining table, and we sat down across from each other. The air between us was heavy with unspoken words, the silence stretching until he finally broke it. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me," he began, his voice calm and controlled. "And I need to know, why? Why wasn't I enough for you?" His question cut deep, and tears filled my eyes as I struggled to find the right words. "It wasn't because you weren't enough," I finally said, my voice cracking. "It was about me. I felt lost and disconnected. Instead of coming to you, instead of talking to you about how I was feeling, I made the worst mistake of my life. I let myself believe that what I was missing was something you couldn't give me, when the truth is, I never gave you the chance." He nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "I'm not saying I'm blameless," he said. "I know I've been distant at times. I know I've taken you for granted. But I never imagined you would turn to someone else." "I'm so sorry, Daniel," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right."